very hard about this. Why? Because even if we borrow, we'll be able to pay this money anyway. The problem we have, soon, we are not going to be able to pay this money because we are at 68%. If by next year we are going to borrow another 1.2 trillion like we did last year, the reality is soon we are going to be at 90%, and then after that Kenya will just become like Thailand. We will not pay our debts back. We will not be able to pay salaries. The economy will just become an economy. It will become a supermarket. Essentially, what does a supermarket do? We become consumers. Then you don't have to worry about agricultural development and growth. You don't have to worry about your health sector. In fact, we as a people will then now begin thinking about, are we taking our patients to Rwanda, which is a country that is operating their health facilities better than ours? Or are we going to educate our children in Rwanda, where the kids are going to school, achieving the grades they want? The educational sector is actually teaching mathematics. And what do we do in our country? We are now saying we don't even have to allow kids to learn maths. Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a passionate plea to my colleagues in this House. The responsibility of fixing the mess we are in falls particularly on this House. Our country has a problem. We are not able to transform this country from a low-level, middle, low-income, developing country into a mid-level, upper-level developing country. We are slowly going to go back to where we used to be, an underdeveloped country. A country that depends on its revenues so that it can govern itself on a daily basis. We are not going to be a country that invests on those sectors that are going to change the livelihoods of our people. We are not a country that is willing to tackle the issues that are important. We must make the central bank to be independent. We must make the treasury to become advisory, so that the treasury's responsibility is to advise the president on what the economic issues are on a micro basis and on a macro basis. What do we do with interest rates? What are we doing with investments and savings? Why is investment in Kenya becoming a problem? Why are countries moving out? Because once companies move out of your country and they go and invest somewhere, then you have lesser of your people getting jobs, then you have lesser of your people generating revenue for themselves, and you have lesser of the government taking taxes, and you cannot continue taxing people indefinitely. Mr. Speaker, many of my colleagues have brought wonderful issues in this place. In this House, I am so happy with what is being discussed. We must make sure that we are able to make sure that the public debt management system is linked to the IFMI system. It is also linked to the own source revenue systems. How can you have a financial platform in your country that only deliberately has been cut into sections and bits and pieces because it makes it easier for those who are cutting deals and making money out of these state resources to do it without it looking seamless? And yet in reality, we are not seamlessly managing our debt and revenues, and yet we are seamlessly managing the stealing of those revenues and the resources. Mr. Speaker, I would like to insist that yes, the automation must be done on even how the withdrawals of payments for the repayment of the debts that we have. And yes, like Senator Eddie Okech has said, why don't we know what the debt stock in our republic is? You have the Auditor General giving you a different figure. You have the Controller of Budget giving you a different figure. You have the Budget Committee, the Finance Committee, when we were sitting the other day, the figure we are having of 12 trillion. I believe that our debt right now is at about 14 trillion. Can we get this committee, the Finance Committee, and this House to make sure that all those four institutions are called and we are able to, even if it means, Madam Speaker, we are able to get a forensic audit to be done so that historically we can even know how much money we borrowed, where did the money go, who spent that money, all the Eurobonds we have gotten, how much money has been used to pay debt. as we speak. And you know what is very interesting, Madam Speaker? Even when we are paying the debts, our debt never goes down. How can you pay 800 billion of debt every year, and yet the debt which you have of 12 trillion never goes down? It means the debts are actually not being paid. It means money is being siphoned off from the international money market, and we are told that this was collected so that we can go and pay our debts, and yet in reality, Madam Speaker, what actually happens is that this money cannot be accounted for by any of our institutions that we have set up to guard what is happening in our country in terms of financial management. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to really plead with the committee and members of this House, and I can see we are now slowly beginning to have a critical mass. Let us make sure that we know how much we are borrowing. Let us make sure we know where the money goes. Let us make sure what we can do. Let us, in the process of achieving this, let us make sure that whatever money that we borrow is utilized fairly, equitably amongst all our counties. And let us make sure, Madam Speaker, that Kenyans begin to trust government. If we don't have an open government, even if the head of state sings from morning till evening, begging Kenyans to raise taxes for him, they will refuse. Why? Because they feel that we are not being open enough and we are not telling them the truth as to what is happening to their money and what is happening to the money that is borrowed for development for our country. Madam Speaker, I would like to say another issue. I have watched what is happening in our country, and I've seen this for quite a long time, and the reason is I've been around for a while. Unless we change the way we behave, unless we change the strategies that we use, unless we change the socio-political, economic behavior as leadership, we are taking our country in the wrong direction. Why do I say so? We have a country. You expect what runs the economy of this country is the private sector. The private sector, the small businesses, the big businesses, the mix between MDGs, all these groups, when you put them together, that is the engine that is supposed to drive our economy. But you see, Madam Speaker, right now in Kenya, our economy is being driven by the national government. That is why everybody wants business in government. That is why everybody wants to do deals in government. That is why any transaction you see, everybody would want to own a piece of land owned by government. Everybody